Happy Wednesday, Year 4. Are you ready for your next instalment of The Secrets of the Sun King? Chapter 4. When I arrived at the hospital, Grandad was asleep. He was as far at the end of the ward in a nice quiet spot, said a different nurse to this morning, thankfully, with a lovely, soft as feathers voice. I'd hoped to find him propped up in bed, glad to see me, but as I passed the other patients, my heart sank. No one here looked well enough for visitors. Behind Grandad's bed, the windows were open. The fresh air made it so bitterly cold the bed was heaped with blankets. All I could see was a tuft of his steel grey hair sticking out from underneath. I pulled up a chair. "That you, Lily?" he said, without looking. "How did you guess?" "You smell of rain," he replied. "Your mother wouldn't have had the good sense to bring her umbrella." The blankets twitched. Grandad's face appeared. I wasn't ready for the shock. It was only a few days since I'd seen him, but he had got so much thinner, like his skin had shrunk down to his bones. "How's my cat? You been feeding her?" he croaked. "I've been trying," I admitted. "Don't tell Mum, but I've skived off school to come and see you." His attempt at laughing turned into a horrible cough. Mum had worried about him passing on the infection, but what bothered me far more was how sick he looked. "Listen, I've got something to tell you." I dropped my voice into a nervous whisper. "A parcel turned up at your shop. It's from a man called Professor Hanawati, and inside it is the most wonderful—" "He sent the jar?" Grandad interrupted. He tried and failed to sit up. I nodded. It was becoming painfully obvious how important this jar was, and how stupid I'd been to let it out of my sight. "Why did the Professor send it to you?" I asked. "It looks like it belongs in a museum." Grandad sputtered. "A museum? That's how all this terrible business started." "What terrible business?" "The curse," he whispered. He looked sicker than ever. Suddenly, sweat rolled off his face, pooling in his collarbones and soaking the pillow and blankets. It was horrible to see him like this. "It's an unusual jar, that's all. I'm sure it's not cursed," I said, trying to reassure him. He grabbed my arm. "I mean it, Lily. There's a curse on that jar. It took Hanawati 20 years to realise." Perhaps it was only the fever talking, but I admit I began to feel unsettled. The Professor's death was very strange, and the jar had certainly unnerved me. "If I don't recover it," Grandad croaked, "if the curse is on me now—" "Shh, don't say that," I broke in, though it was dawning on me that he might be talking sense. Since the letter had come from the Professor, he had got sicker and sicker, and how the jar had been passed on to him. I grew suddenly afraid. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "If this is a curse, what will break it?" "Send the jar back, Lily," Grandad gasped. "To Egypt?" He nodded desperately. "To the hotel. Mr. Ibrahim, before the curse—" I sat back in my seat, stumped already. How on earth was I going to get the jar back to Erith? "Which hotel?" I pressed him. "And who's Mr. Ibrahim?" "Winter Palace Reception," he wheezed. "Winter Palace? Is that the hotel's name?" He coughed. I tried to help him with a drink, but he pushed the cup away, sloshing water all over the bed. "You have to, otherwise too late." Another coughing fit seized him. It was a horrible bed-shaking, scouring noise that went on until the nurse came running with a bowl. I didn't see what Grandad spat into it, but it sounded wet and solid. When he wiped his mouth afterwards, there was blood on the cloth. It was awful to see him so unwell. The nice nurse, seeing my shock, nudged me from my seat. "You better go, love." But Grandad was beckoning me to come closer. "I should have taken it. Not mine to decide all those years ago." "He's rambling," the nurse insisted. "Really, you should go." "He wants me to help him," I said desperately. "I don't know what to do." "Give the poor chap a bit of peace and quiet, and that's what he needs," she replied. Then Grandad tried to speak. He really couldn't breathe. The nurse propelled me away from the bed with her free hand, as with the other she thrust a bowl back under Grandad's chin. "Believe me, it's better if you don't see him like this," she said. It was too late for that. I don't think I'd ever witnessed another living person in such a dreadful state, never mind someone this dear to me. It was like being thumped right in the heart. Knowing how much Grandad would hate me to cry, I held on to my tears until I got outside. Even then, it was awkward to be sobbing in public with people staring and hurrying past as if my sadness was catching. Returning the jar to Egypt,